Okay, we are on air. No people
That's
there.
great.
There is no one.
We'll see what happens.
Good evening. Welcome to Faunáticos, the most animal podcast. Today we are going to be speaking English because we have a very special guest from the United Kingdom. He's Tony, and sorry. No one there. I was... Okay. I couldn't see you on the screen. Now it's okay. It's
is
fine.
that better?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
My fault. Okay, let's start again. So no people there. Don't worry. Tony, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. We're very warm here today. It's surprisingly warm in the UK, which is unusual.
Okay, maybe it's happening everywhere. So today we have with us Tony, a professional in the reptile world since the age of 15. He has worked in various areas of herpetoculture, from retail to live food breeding and venomous collections. Additionally, he is experienced journalist and an active advocate for the herpetological community. So Tony, let's start. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome to Faunáticos, as you wrote in Instagram, yeah?
Of course.
That's the translation to English, Faunáticos. So, responsible reptile keeping, great. It's an organization, it's a YouTube channel, and it should be something like, how do you say, something we should repeat as one time and again and many times.
Responsible it's an important keeping. Project, and
like a mantra.
Yeah.
You have had an incredible career from a very young age, as I said, 15 years old. Tell us about your beginnings in this field and how your career evolved to become a recognized professional in this case.
Yeah, for sure. So I know I don't look very old. I know I look very young, but I've actually been working with reptiles for almost 40 years now. I started when I was 15, and my first job working with reptiles was in a very large reptile store, a very large reptile shop. At the time, it was the largest reptile store in Europe. And because I had a job there, I got to meet everybody who was important and experts from not only the UK, but also across Europe and across America. So I was very privileged to be very young and very inexperienced, but to have access to all of these really important and knowledgeable and very clever people. So that was a very great privilege for me. And when my boss died, the boss who ran the reptile house, he died. My job then was to work with the different people that I met. And so I got to work on their projects and work with them. And so that's always been very interesting. I've always had the opportunity to work with interesting animals and interesting projects. So that's always been very cool to do. But at the time when I was working at these projects, the people who ran magazines said, hey, Tony, you work with some really interesting animals. Would you like to write some magazine articles for us? So I said, hey, yeah, I can do that. I'll write some magazine articles for you. So that's something that I did for a very long time, alongside working with reptiles and working with the reptile keepers that I worked with, the experts. And because I was writing about reptiles all the time, it became my job to understand what was happening in different places in the world. And it became my job to understand what the animal rights campaigners were doing. And over the years, I've written for probably although I haven't written for magazines for a long time. I've probably written for most of the pet trade magazines in the UK, many of those in Europe, and many of those in America as well. So I have a lot of experience and a broad understanding of the situation across the whole of the world, and my contacts around the world make sure that I am informed and know the news that's happening in their part of the world. So I did this for a very long time, and because we were working to understand what the animal rights campaigners were doing to try to close down reptile keepers, we should at some point discuss the difference between animal welfare and animal rights, because there's a very large difference, but we'll come to that. So I worked with some of the animal and reptile advocacy organizations in the UK that were working with politicians and legislators and civil servants to protect reptile keeping and to protect the reptile trade, where the animal rights campaigners wanted to shut down the trade and stop people keeping reptiles. The advocacy organizations were working to protect our rights to do so and make sure that people did so responsibly. And we had, by this point, I ran a communications business, very much like media for museums and for galleries. So we understood how to create content that people wanted to listen to and wanted to engage with. And we used this expertise to help the advocacy organizations to broadcast their message. But it didn't go very well. This was a bad idea, because we're working to help the advocacy organizations. We couldn't work to earn a living. And when we were working to earn our living, we couldn't help the advocacy organizations. So it didn't work very well. So that's one of the reasons that started the idea for responsible reptile keeping. So that's a very brief 40-year history for you, a very quick history.
Very quick, yeah. A few minutes. So, what led to launch the RRK project in 2023? The main reasons?
Yeah, it was a long time for me to process and understand what needed to be done. And what really happened was when COVID and the lockdown occurred, I had some opportunity to think about it in more detail. But what I already knew was that the animal rights campaigners, who actually, I think we should start by very quickly explaining the difference between animal rights and animal welfare.
Yes, of course.
So animal welfare is all about looking after our animals well and giving them the best possible opportunity to thrive under our care. Mm-hmm. Whereas animal rights is very interested in closing down the reptile trade and stopping people from keeping animals. They're not very interested in welfare. They're only interested in completely stopping us from keeping animals. And this could be birds, reptiles, fish, mammals, everything. So we knew that the animal rights campaigners were very good at using social media to broadcast misinformation and lies and propaganda. And we also knew that the reptile keeping community was not very good at challenging this misinformation. The animal rights campaigners could say whatever they want about us, and nobody did anything. Nobody corrected them. Nobody held them to account and said, "Hey, that's not true. That's not accurate." And we knew we needed to do this because if you think about it, over the last 15 years or so, the internet has changed the whole world, of course. Where do people go today to find their news, to get information, to do research, to form their ideas, to form their opinions, to form their ideologies? Where do we do this? We do this on the internet. Very few people now look at mainstream news on the television or read newspapers. Most people get most of their information from the internet. And we've been very bad as reptile keepers, as exotic animal keepers. We've been very bad at telling our side of the story to challenge the misinformation that's been broadcast. Now, we tried for a very long time to attach our expertise as communicators to the advocacy organizations. And as I said, we failed. We knew that it was a full-time job and somebody needed to do this full-time. Mm-hmm. And every time this misinformation appears online, everybody gets very angry about it and says that somebody should do something. Have you ever seen the statistic that 75% of pet reptiles die in the first year? Did you see this? It's broadcast everywhere. Yeah. It's on the internet a lot. It's in the mainstream media a lot. And even I was at a meeting with the European Commission and European Parliament recently, and it was even discussed there that 75% of reptiles die in their first year. And we know instinctively that this isn't true. We know that it's absolute rubbish. Yeah. And we even have research to prove that it's rubbish. But because it gets repeated and repeated and repeated by the animal rights campaigners, lots of people think it's true. So our job is to correct this. Our first video that we produced was to tell the truth about the reptiles in their first year, and 75% of them do not die in their first year. It's between 3 and 4%, and we have 2 studies that say this. So we have the research, and we can tell people this. And what we know now is that when people see this misinformation online, that 75% of reptiles die in the first year, our members and our supporters say, hey, that's not true. Here's a video you can see now. I will show you this video that tells you the truth, and now you can stop lying. And this is what we're aiming to do. With responsible reptile keeping, we're aiming to take control of the narrative and to tell our side of the story so that people who don't know reptiles or understand reptiles and would otherwise, they would believe the animal rights propaganda. Now they can hear what we have to say, and now they understand the truth. And slowly, slowly, we're taking control of the situation now.
Mm-hmm. So until this point, we had a very big mistake. We made a very big mistake not to show everyone what we are doing, how are our animals kept, and there are many people breeding all kinds of species in their houses, and animals that live many years, a lot of years more than they live in nature. Yeah,
absolutely.
So our mistake is not to show what we are doing. And
you're absolutely right.
And now the main problem is people in Spain, I don't know in the UK, but in Spain, many people don't want to show them because they want to maintain a low profile.
Low profile,
you know?
Yeah. And that's it's the same in the UK as well. It's I think it's a little better in the UK because we have a highly regulated pet trade, and the legislation that we have is very strict, probably the strictest and most serious legislation in the whole world. Mm-hmm. And so we can be very confident that what we do in the UK is good, is good level. But what people don't realize is that every single herpetological advancement has been achieved by private keepers. It's not scientists, it's not researchers, it's not zookeepers and curators. It's none of these people. They follow what we do. The herpetological community, the reptile keeping community, has been responsible for every single advancement in reptile keeping that has promoted good husbandry and promoted good welfare. This is what we've done. And so I think personally we should celebrate reptile keepers. We should celebrate and praise and thank reptile keepers, professional reptile keepers, for doing such a good job. But sadly, we tend to be attacked instead. So we're hoping to change that so that people will understand how important private keepers are to understanding how reptiles live, how they do well. If people want to support good welfare, if people want to support captive breeding success and a good understanding and more science and information about reptiles, they should support reptile keepers. They shouldn't, if people love animals and want to care for animals well and make sure that animals are cared for well, then they should be celebrating and praising reptile keepers. They shouldn't be joining the organizations that want to close us down. But they do, because they've been given bad information. Oh, these animals are badly cared for and they all taken from the wild and they will probably eat your children. It's such a big problem. We need to stop this. That's the only story that they've heard until now.
Yes.
And now we're able to tell the real story so people understand the truth.
Yeah. And it's very curious that they are lying. They are using unreal numbers. And we want to do everything good, everything in the right way, and we could make the same. Yeah, we could invent like an history and tell them no animals death. Every single animal, exotic animal, is alive, but you are trying to do
would be untrue.
The correct way. Yeah, you're trying to get the numbers,
exactly.
The correct numbers, and show the truth, only the truth.
Exactly. And this is important, that you make a very important point, is that we should never try to defend the indefensible. We should never try to defend things that happen that are bad, that shouldn't happen. And it would be very silly of us to say that there is no such thing as a problem with reptile welfare. Reptiles are very much like every other animal. There will be someone somewhere who is so bad, who is so stupid, who is so unpleasant that they will not do the right thing for their animal. They're the people that we need to educate, or they're the people that we need to prosecute and stop. Most of the problems with welfare are simply education problems, people who don't understand and don't know enough. And we can help with that. With our project, we can help to educate them to do things properly. We can explain where to go for information. We can point them in the right direction for experts who will help them. So that's a good thing. But what we can certainly do is we can help to reduce the number of people who make these mistakes. But we can also demonstrate that most people, most reptile keepers, do a very, very good job. And I say this because compared with dogs or cats or rabbits or horses or any other animal, reptiles have probably the best measurable welfare standards.
Yes.
So I can give you a good example. In the UK before COVID changed a lot of things, and many people went out during COVID and they bought a dog. I think did the same happen in Spain during COVID? Lots of people bought a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, same in the UK. Well, before that happened,
reptiles too.
And reptiles too. Yes. But before that happened in the UK, it was estimated that around there were about 8 million dogs in the UK. But it was also estimated that there were almost 8 million reptiles as well. So the number of reptiles in the UK was about the same as the number of dogs. And at the same time, we analysed the data given from many different reptile and dog, cat, animal welfare charities. And the number of dogs in rehoming or rescue centres outnumbered the number of reptiles 20-1. So for every one single reptile that needed a new home, there were 20 dogs that needed a new home. And the number of dogs and reptiles was about the same.
The same.
The number of animals, the number of reptiles that go through a vet with problems, with health problems. There are fewer reptiles go through. Now, we know that vets don't work with reptiles very well or very often, so that's something. But certainly the welfare problems that we know about are dogs and cats and horses and, you know, animals that more people keep. And reptiles in comparison are very well kept. In fact, I would go so far as to say that for many, many people, reptiles are the best pet. For many people, you don't have to take them for a walk. Yeah. They don't kill the local wildlife like a cat does. They don't mind if you go out to work all day and leave them on their own. In fact, they may even prefer this. Yeah. They don't take up a lot of space. You can't be allergic to them. And also, they're the second safest pet to keep. Yeah. Yes. Can you guess which is the safest pet to keep statistically?
A toy pet, maybe.
Yes, that works. But the safest pet you can keep statistically is a fish.
It's a fish,
obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you guess the most dangerous pet you can keep?
A dog.
A dog. Yeah. Actually, it depends. Dogs are probably the top, but also horses are very dangerous. Mm-hmm. The horse will bite you, kick you, you fall off. Yep. You know, if a horse hurts you, it's probably going to hurt you quite badly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all the way down the list at the bottom, we have fish. The second safest pet is a reptile.
Yes.
We have a survey in the UK run by the National Health Service, the NHS, that records all of the injuries that come to hospital that were caused by an animal. And reptiles are one of the safest animals you can keep. And I saw some of the data. It was quite funny. There was one lady who was in her garden and she was using scissors to cut grass to feed to her locusts. So the locusts were to feed to her lizard. Yeah. But because she cut her finger with the scissors, and the grass was for the locusts and the locusts were for the lizards, this was recorded as a reptile injury.
And what about the man?
Yeah, there was also a man, he was in his garden. He thought that he saw a snake, so he turned to run away and he put his foot on a rake, which hit him in the face. And this was also recorded as a reptile injury. But, you know, these are funny stories, but it does demonstrate that the story will tell you that most reptiles are safe. The injuries you get are very mild. If you know, most people don't get injured. And if you do get injured, it's very mild. I will maintain that reptiles are the best pet for most people.
Yes, totally. You have to say only a little terrarium with a couple of anoles, green anoles, maybe cheap, clean,
interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
Fun.
You won't have never any noise.
Yeah. And also for the other thing that animal rights campaigners say is that, you will get disease from your animals.
Sure.
And we know that most people don't catch salmonella from their animals. It's very difficult and unusual to catch salmonella. You will probably catch salmonella from the food inside your fridge. Mm-hmm. And you will probably catch diseases from your dog and your cat. Your dog goes into the street and eats crap and then comes back and kisses you, and then you have salmonella, then you have disease.
Maybe,
but we don't do this with reptiles.
If you lick your turtle,
you could get you could get it then. But certainly, there's lots of reasons that we should be celebrating and promoting keeping reptiles. And if you debate with animal rights campaigners, they always come out with sensational information, lies, propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, and it's very easy to correct them. But we haven't done this. Not until responsible reptile keeping was launched. We didn't do anything to correct this misinformation. So now we have a problem that legislation happens and new laws occur, and we're only just starting now to correct this misinformation.
Mm-hmm. But we have more problems now. and like you are doing, and Fauna here in Spain, Chema, who is watching us.
Oh, hey, Jose, how are you?
Some people working hard to show the truth, but our opponents are in the mainstream.
They are.
But we are not.
Yes, and that is a problem. But I don't know if it's the same in Spain. I think Spain is particularly bad. Spain has a particularly bad problem with strange ideology in politics.
Yes.
But in the UK and in many other countries, many of the civil servants and the politicians understand that the animal rights campaigners are firstly very few people, but they make lots of noise and they behave like extremists. They behave badly. They don't behave honorably. And I am pretty confident that most of the people understand that dealing with these people is usually a problem, and they are very eager to listen to us. But we are behind. We are chasing, trying to catch up, because the animal rights campaigners have been producing research, scientific research, for many years. This research is bogus. It's rubbish. It's very bad science. But then the politicians turn to us and say, do you have research? And we say, no, we have experience. We have knowledge. We have practical understanding. But they want to see research. So again, we are catching up. We have some problems. And because the animal rights campaigners have been so successful for 20 years in broadcasting their message and gathering support from the public and bringing in lots of money in donations from the public, they have been able to produce lots of research and to pay for people to lobby government and to harass different organizations. And they have an impact, and they have a much bigger budget than us. And they have much more experience of broadcasting on social media and also in mainstream media. And we're just catching up now. We need to work hard to catch up and be as effective. And I'm encouraged that responsible reptile keeping has only been in action for almost 2 years now. And we're already making a big difference. So that's encouraging. It's great that people are eager to listen to us and eager to understand what we're explaining to them.
Mm-hmm. But it's very difficult to get there where they are now in the mainstream, because they are playing with feelings, with sorrow. So how could we play this game? It's not easy.
Well, this is where our expertise as communicators is very helpful. So I should explain a little bit about what we do and how we do it so that you can understand. So imagine that you are a university student and someone gives you a textbook, and this book is very boring. But you know you have to read this book and understand this book if you want to pass your exam, yeah? You have to...
Stop a little. So we are the boring book.
Sorry?
As I understood, we are the boring book.
Well, hold that thought. Remember this for one moment. If you are at work and someone gives to you a very boring report, then you must read this report if you want to keep your job. Yeah? But if you go to a museum, if you go to an art gallery, if you go to a zoo or an exhibition, and you read the panel on the wall, there is something, and you read the information on the wall. If this information is boring, there is no consequences if you ignore it. Yeah, you can just take out your phone and do something else on your phone, or you can walk to the next place and look at something different. So our job as communicators in the museum is to write in a way that makes people go, hey, that's interesting. This is something I like to read. This is something I like to understand. And so there's a very practical skill in explaining things to people who don't have to listen, they don't have to read, but if you make it interesting, then they will. Now, the problem with scientists and experts and enthusiasts is that they like detail, they like their facts, they like to know everything about a topic, yeah? And so the mother with her children go to the museum, and the museum is about steam engines, and the information on the wall is 2,000 words. She's like, hey, I'm not reading that. I'm going to go to the cafe and get some coffee and a piece of cake. Yeah. Our job is to make the information shorter, snappier, interesting to engage with. And this is how we broadcast information to our audience as well, because our audience doesn't have to read it if it's boring. Our audience doesn't have to engage with it if it's boring. But there are certain skills and science and procedures and principles that you can use to make information engaging. And you hit a very good one when you were talking earlier, is that it has to have an emotion. Yeah. It's no good just telling people facts, the numbers, the data. This is important, but it's not the reason why people want to listen. People want to listen to stories, emotion. This is how you get information across. You take the facts and you make a story. And this is what we do. This is how we manage to transmit information. But the emotion is very important.
And the thing is that it isn't easy for me. For me, it isn't easy. I'm not a professional communicator.
Exactly.
I'm an amateur. I'm trying to show what I'm doing as well as I can.
Exactly.
I'm always thinking, how can I get this better, make the other thing better, and I only want the animals.
But what you do is very important. Yeah, there are people who definitely want to listen to a podcast about the things that you say. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the principles that we understand about communication. So you like a podcast. Yeah. Most people your age don't want to read a magazine anymore. Magazine is a dying art form that not many people want to read. Some people want a 5-minute video. Some people want a 30-minute interview. Some people want a full-length documentary film. So it would be silly for me to produce a magazine and then insist that you read it. You don't want to. You want a podcast.
Yep.
So what we do is we create as many different types of media as we can. Podcast, video, interview, documentary film, magazine, lots of different types of content. And we broadcast it in as many different places as possible so that we can reach as many people as possible. And we make sure that it's interesting and engaging and informative. And we can do that. But this is why we all know that we have a problem with animal rights campaigners. We all agree this.
Yes.
We all agree that a big part of the problem is caused by the internet. Yeah. And we all agree that someone should do something about it. Everyone says, oh, we should write our own articles. We should make our own podcasts. We should make our own films. And that's true. But who should do this? Who should do it? So maybe the big reptile companies should do this. Well, perhaps, but they're already busy running their business. They know how to run a reptile business. They probably don't have the time or the funds or the interest or the expertise to create the content that we do. So then maybe we should ask the advocacy organizations across the world to do it. Well, we know that they're very badly funded and they're busy fighting legislation, doing their job with politicians, and they probably don't know how to do communication very well. So they can't do it. What we do know is that the public, the reptile keeping community, will happily share our content. If we produce the content, they will happily share it. They will, wherever they see information that's incorrect online, they go, hey, and they share our content. They will do the difficult work with us. It just needs for somebody to produce the content. So that's what we decided to do. And we decided that we need to do it internationally. And we do it because we're funded by everybody who is interested in reptiles. Every single person who has an interest in reptiles can help to support our work by providing the support that we need, the funding that we need to produce the content. And then everybody who donates a little bit to the organization is part of the job to help us to broadcast it broadly. All of the problems that we face are international, whether we're in Spain, Germany, Italy, America, Britain, wherever.
Mexico.
All of the problems occur the same in every country. Positive lists, white lists, enclosure sizes, all of these issues happen everywhere. And it doesn't even matter what kind of animal you keep, whether it be fish, birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, anything. We all face the same problems. Reptiles face the worst problem. We are the front line. We are the ones that take the most attack. But they're all the same for every kind of animal. So that's why we're now working with advocacy organizations all around Europe and all across the world. And we're also working with people who keep fish and birds and mammals. The job that we do can help all of these organizations, and with each person, each organization, each business just funding with a little bit of money, it all comes together to help us to produce the content that we need to broadcast internationally.
Yes, that's it. And other problem we have is, I don't know, it's something about this actual society or culture. I'm not sure. People prefer to see an attack better than see something like I'm doing everything well, peace and
sensationalism.
love, yes.
It's true, and that is a very difficult thing for us to solve. And there are many people with reptiles that produce this sensationalist content, wrestling with large pythons and feeding animals to reptiles and being bitten by animals. I think this does harm for responsible keepers, but it wouldn't be so bad if we were showing the good stuff as well. And we can do this. And this is what we're doing. But I think you're right. Sensationalism is much more attractive to people now than ever before, especially with the internet. I was speaking to a film producer yesterday who works with David Attenborough. And he says that the typical length of a video that people want to interact with now is 17 seconds. 17 seconds is a typical video length. This is unbelievable. You know, to make things interesting in 17 seconds probably needs to be a little sensational.
Yes. It's difficult to make a good strike.
Well, this is why we do what we do. We understand the kind of information that we need to broadcast and transmit. Mm-hmm. We understand how to do it in a way that engages people. And if we can slowly take control of the information that people perceive and understand, yes, maybe we can get people to say, hey, actually, these guys are doing a good job. We should help them instead of attacking them. You know, mm-hmm, we will change people's minds. And this is what's important. We have a lot of ground to make up, and our job is very important, but it's necessary.
Yes. But the point is, someone who is interested about reptiles is going to look for information, is going to find us, is going to know the truth. But the thing is, those people who don't really care about this, but if they heard that 75% of reptiles died in the first year, they will be impacted.
Exactly.
And they will have, I don't know, it's difficult. You have to find a point to impact them in the same way, but in the opposite, way. Yeah,
it is. And I think there are people that we will never be able to convince. There are people who will have one idea and never change their mind. There are people who just don't care, who wouldn't care one way or the other.
Yeah.
But there are people who like information, who like accurate information. And this is part of the reason why mainstream media is becoming smaller and less important. People know that they can't find accurate information with the mainstream media anymore. The mainstream media just wants to get people to watch so that they can sell advertisements and make money. They only have very small pieces of time to give to any topic, so you can only get the very quickest and most sensational information on mainstream media. If you wanted to learn how to fix your car or to program your computer or to breed a Boland's python or to find a rattlesnake in America, you wouldn't go to the mainstream media. You'd go to the internet. So the people who are interested are looking for this information, and the people even who are interested in the opposite of what we do are still going to see our content, and maybe then all the people that our content is relevant to will go, hey, that was interesting. It seems very accurate. It is very well researched. We shall listen to this channel. And that's one of the good things about what we do, is we have access to all of the world's biggest experts in any one particular topic about reptiles. If I wanted to create content about breeding Komodo dragons, I know who to call. If I want to make content about king cobras, I know who to call. There is information and expertise available to us, the highest quality, the most expert, the most professional people. We have access to these people, so we know that the content that we produce is accurate and informative and helpful. And that's how we can build a reputation that people will trust and that people will want to come back to for more.
Yes, but the problem is everyone can vote, and in Spain we use a word, some Spanish people who is watching us are going to laugh now. Do you know what is a cuñado?
No.
Is the translation of brother-in-law. Here in Spain,
Okay.
we use cuñado for someone who knows everything.
Oh yeah, they exist.
But nothing. Yeah.
Yes, they exist.
And in Spain we have too much cuñados.
Yes, absolutely.
And they
this
vote.
is it.
They vote.
Yes, it's true, and it's difficult. We know it's very difficult. I spend a long time being very sad about the situation that we have to deal with, and it makes me very worried that people are not spending enough time to understand and doing the research. But I'm also very encouraged and optimistic that the people who need the information, the people who want to know and want to understand, if we make the information available to them, then they will understand it. It just so happens that right now they don't have anywhere easy to find that information, and we're hoping to change that.
We should. And you should.
We try. We try very hard.
So, in your things, what are the major challenges we face in reptile keeping today?
Okay, so historically, the animal rights campaigners have used 3 different tactics to attack us with. The first one is animal welfare. They say that all of these animals are abused, we don't know how to keep them, they don't do very well as pets or in captivity, and they say all of these things that we know aren't true. So the first way that we know it isn't true is that if reptiles didn't do very well as pets, then people wouldn't buy them. But reptiles are so popular, and so the biggest problem with reptile keeping is that they live too long. That's the biggest problem. They live too long. And if you keep a reptile that's going to be alive for 20 or 30 years, or if it's a tortoise or a turtle, 50 or 100 years, there is a strong probability that your life will change and that you may not be able to care for your animal anymore. So you may have children, you may become ill, you may die, you may get a new job, you may get a new house where you can't keep your reptile anymore.
And here we have another funny thing. When you have an old dog and you can't take care anymore of it, it's very difficult to find someone to take care.
Yeah.
But if you have a 50-year tortoise, in less than an hour, you will have 20 or 30 people who want to take care of it.
That's good. But yeah, certainly this tells us that reptiles do very well in captivity and they're very good pets. The best pet is one that is suitable and fits with your life very easily.
Yes.
So reptiles are very good at fitting with our life very easily. And all the reptiles that I know now will usually live longer as a pet than they do in the wild. So all of this accusation and lies about animals being badly treated, we know that it's rubbish. We know that it's wrong. But it's a very easy argument to make. If you take one photograph of one reptile that's badly treated and then you say, oh, all of the reptiles are like this, it makes very good news. It makes very good, oh, this is terrible. I must give some money to this organization. So it's the first one out of the three is welfare. And we know that this is crap. Yeah. The second thing they attack us with is conservation problems. They say, oh, all of these animals, they are stolen from the wild, which we know is absolute nonsense. In the UK, we found some statistics that showed us that at least 95% of reptiles being sold by the big reptile wholesalers, the big reptile pet businesses, 95% of the animals they sold are captive bred. But then we found out that most of the reptile stores don't buy their reptiles from the two big wholesalers. Most of them buy their reptiles from private breeders. So most of the reptiles that we keep are captive bred. The bright yellow pythons that people breed, the stripy geckos, these have never been near the wild. And, they're all captive bred, so they're not stolen from the wild. And the other thing they say is that, they could become invasive and kill off all our natural wildlife. Well, in Spain, maybe the situation is different, but in the UK, it's too cold for reptiles to live. And the same is true for Sweden and Norway and Poland and many other places. So even in warm areas such as Spain, the likelihood that enough reptiles would escape or be released, and then they would come together and find a perfect environment, habitat for them to live, and then they would come together and get jiggy and make more reptiles. It's not going to happen. It very rarely will happen. It sometimes happens, but very rarely, and it's not a big problem that needs all reptiles to be banned. In the UK, we have a saying, it's a phrase. It says to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yeah. The bathwater you need to throw away. The problems, yes, throw them away, but keep the baby. We shouldn't ban all reptiles. We should not throw out the baby with the bathwater. So we have welfare. We spoke about this. We have conservation, invasive species, which is just a tiny problem, and being taken from the wild, which really doesn't happen very much anymore. And the third thing that they attack us with is human health. The first thing they say is that reptiles are dangerous and they will eat your children, which is ridiculous. So in the UK, and I think it is the same in Europe and also in America, around 85% of the reptiles that we keep are just 6 species. Can you guess which 6 species are the most popular?
Yes, I saw that video. I don't really remember.
Oh, you saw my video?
I don't remember the species.
Okay, I'll tell you.
I can try to guess.
Well, you would guess. If I asked you to guess, you would say corn snakes.
Yeah.
You would say royal ball pythons.
Yeah, euplepharis.
You would say bearded dragons.
Yeah, bearded dragons.
You would say leopard geckos.
Yeah.
you would say crested geckos,
Yes,
and you would say Mediterranean tortoises.
of course.
Yeah. And then if we wanted to be generous, we would also say Western hognose snakes, maybe.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So most of the reptiles that we see are these friendly, small, very easy to keep species. And for a good reason, they all are very nice, interesting, colorful, friendly animals, which is why they're popular. And they're not going to hurt you. You know, the worst thing, they may just bring some blood if you're very unlucky, but then they won't hurt you.
None of them could be invasive in Spain.
I don't think they could. No. So
Neither ball python.
oh yeah, well we know about that story. That's a terrible story. When this is how I met Jose, and I was absolutely disgusted when I heard that story about the ball pythons in Spain being banned. It's ridiculous, but this is what happens sometimes. But so they said so we know about welfare, we know about conservation, and we know about human health. They also say that we will catch terrible diseases from our reptiles, and we know this isn't true either. So these are the challenges that we have. But today, in the last few years, an even bigger challenge has become a problem. There is a much worse situation for us to be concerned about, and this is called positive lists, or sometimes it's called a white list. And what this is if you understand, do you have the word in Spanish, a blacklist?
Lista negra, yes.
Okay. So a blacklist is
Much
a list
better
of
than
things
white list.
that are disallowed. These are things that you cannot have or
Forbidden.
you cannot do. Yeah?
Yeah.
The opposite of this is a white list. And these are things that you can have. Yeah. So a blacklist of animals that you should not keep is probably sensible. So instead of saying you can't keep them, maybe they should just be regulated like venomous species. Yeah. So we have a list that says, hey, you know, if you want to keep these animals, you have to be careful.
But
the others, sorry?
This is more complicated than that, because
of course
you can make a blacklist.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that someone somewhere is going to be capable to have the correct installation, the correct
absolutely
facilities.
I don't think any animal should
to have
be banned.
any animal.
I don't think there are a couple of animals that maybe we can't keep in captivity. I would say maybe a blue whale that we should not keep in captivity. And I think perhaps an albatross that we cannot keep in captivity. I would say this is true.
Yeah.
But anything other than this, I don't know much about birds or fish or whales. But in terms of reptiles, I can't think of one reptile that we cannot keep in captivity if we have the right environment and the right knowledge and skills. I've worked with Komodo dragons, I've worked with king cobras, I've worked with Cuban crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles. And if you understand the animal and can provide the right facilities, I think you should be allowed to keep it. But I think that you should be able to prove that you can keep it safely. And when I say safely, you should have to prove that you can keep your neighbors and the public safe. If you want to keep a Komodo dragon or a crocodile and you make a mistake and you get injured or die, well, that was up to you. You knew what you were doing. We didn't want to take away your freedom to do that, and we expect you to be responsible. But we are only worried about our neighbors and the public.
Yes.
In the UK, we have something called the Dangerous Wild Animals Act. And this is a list of animals that you cannot keep unless you have a license. And to get a license, that you have to prove that you can keep it safely and humanely. And it's the only piece of legislation that I know in the world that has been 100% successful. Because in the time that we've had this legislation since the 1970s, not one single member of the public has been harmed or hurt by an animal on the dangerous wild animals list. So it's a good way to regulate animals that we would call a blacklist.
Yes.
The opposite of a blacklist is a white list. And this is a list of animals that you are allowed to keep. And this list is usually very short. So in Norway, I think they have, is it 18 or 19 species of reptile they're allowed to keep there? Just nine.
Stop. There is a
19
connection problem.
species of tree boas are on that list.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no.
Yes, I can.
Could you repeat
on the list?
last? Yeah.
Yeah, in Norway, they can only keep 19 species of reptile.
Mm-hmm.
The list are strange animals such as an Amazon tree boa. Why is an Amazon tree boa on that list? Well, the answer is because the people who helped to make the list put on the list the animals that they wanted to keep, the animals that they had in their collection. Yeah. So the positive list, we know from our experience in Norway, the white list, we know is unenforceable. We know that even the Spanish government, when reptiles were completely banned back in 1977, reptiles were completely banned right through to 2017. And in that time, the Norwegian government said that there were at least 110,000 animals, reptiles being kept in Norway, and there were many pet shops selling food and equipment for reptiles. Reptiles were banned, but still there were so many people keeping them. So we know that they're unenforceable. We know that they're unnecessary because we know there are no welfare issues or conservation issues or health issues. Yeah. And they're very expensive. So anybody who thinks that a positive list is a good idea, I think needs to understand the situation better. And that's why we brought out our video about positive lists, which we know is being viewed in many different countries around the world and by legislators and governments. We were interviewed by a veterinary magazine last month that thought positive lists were a good idea. And because they had information from us and because they'd seen our video and asked us to comment, the article that came out was much fairer, much more informed. But certainly positive lists, or white lists as they're also called, is one of the big problems that we have in many countries around the world. Holland, the Netherlands, has just brought in a positive list for mammals. I think there are 9 species of mammal on the Dutch positive list. So they're a problem everywhere. But I'm hopeful that governments will understand that they're a terrible idea.
Okay. For a resume, responsible reptile keeping has 5 main goals.
Yes.
Yes. Can you briefly explain each one of them?
Oh, you're going to ask me to remember the 5 goals now.
Yes.
So, Vicky, can you help me with get the 5 goals up so that I can remember them all? So the first one is to refute the misinformation that's broadcast by animal rights campaigners. That's the first one. When animal rights campaigners tell lies about us, we are in a position now to give the facts and the information to refute that information. We want to fund research that gives the accurate information about reptile keeping. This is something that we're not able to do yet, but we're hoping to develop enough funding to fund research. We want to help the keepers who aren't quite doing the right thing, who aren't quite looking after their animals as well as they should. We want to educate them so that they are better at keeping their animals. So that's 3. Sorry. Another one is to celebrate. Here we go. Fund research, educating. Oh yeah, we're politically active. So we are joining meetings in government working groups that help to inform legislators about how to make good legislation. So we're politically active. And the 5th thing is we want to celebrate the good work that's being done by reptile keepers all around the world. And there's a lot for us to be proud about. So we should shout about it. We should tell people how good we are and the good work that's being done. So refuting misinformation, politically active, funding research when we have enough funding, educating keepers to do better, and also to celebrate the good work that keepers are doing.
So you are like the counterpart of fauna here in Spain, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. And it's very encouraging that there are organizations all around the world now that are working hard to do similar work to us. Our specialist job is to be like a media department for all of these organizations, and this is what's happening more at the Fauna Federation conference. We met people from advocacy organizations from all across Europe, and these organizations were very eager to be involved in the work that we do so that we could tell their side of the story. Two things came out of that meeting. The first one was thank you again to Jose, who organized it and helped us to have the ability for our content to be translated into many different European languages. So we're right now translating all of our content into, how many, was it 12 languages that we're translating into? Spanish, German, Italian, French, Polish, Swedish, Chinese, can't remember the others, but lots of different languages. We're translating it using artificial intelligence to translate into many languages. But the even more exciting thing that came from the Fauna conference is that we found a way that we can work with the advocacy organizations from around Europe. Now, none of these organizations can dedicate enough money to produce information and content like we do with their own situation. But what we can do is each one of these organizations has agreed to fund part of the work that we do. And when we put that funding together, we can produce content, and we use the logo and the branding of those organizations for them to send this information out that we produced like their own. They have helped us to produce this. So we add the Fauna logo or the Zorf logo or the ZZF logo, and they send it out. So we're able to produce content on their behalf that they can send out to their stakeholders in their native language. And then everybody who sees what they're doing will say, hey, this organization's doing a very good job. We should continue to fund them, and we should support them, and we should engage with them. So that's a wonderful thing that came out of the Fauna conference when we were there.
Okay, that's good.
It's encouraging.
A lot of work.
Yes, this is the problem. The problem is that we have so many things that we could do and should do, and we simply don't have enough funding to do this. We have to be very selective about the work that we do and pick on the things that we think will be the most useful way to use the funds that we're given. And we're always in need of more funds. We are not yet sustainable.
Talking about this, you mentioned that memberships are vital for responsible reptile keeping. How can members really could help to make a significant difference here?
Absolutely, it's a very good point. So we knew from the very beginning that we needed to be a membership organization. And there are two reasons for this. Firstly, if a member joins as a monthly member, then it helps us with funding. Membership is very affordable. So if you're a reptile keeper, you can join us for £4. It's about €5 every month. It's less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. But this is important, obviously, as funding for us. But more importantly, the more members we have, the bigger voice we have when we discuss situations with politicians or lawyers or other people, or with journalists. The more members we have, the more important our voice is. So that's vitally important. As I say, people can join us as a member for £4 or €5. if they want to help us more, they can take out another membership, which is, I think, £10, or you can join annually. And the reason we want people to join us isn't for a mug or a sticker or a T-shirt or a magazine. These are all things that we give to different types of members. We want people to join us simply because they understand that we have a mission. They understand that there is an important job to do, and they want to help us to support us to do that job. That's why we want people to join. People who join, we'll send you a window sticker. We'll, the £10 a month ones, we get a mug, and if you join annually, you get a T-shirt. But we don't want you to join for a T-shirt. We want you to join because you understand the assignment. You understand the challenge that we need to deal with. We have membership for reptile stores or pet stores, and we have memberships for education experiences, the people who take their animals for people to see, to understand how beautiful they are. And we also have sponsors who are reptile businesses. Yeah. So Zoomed, they support us. Exoterra support us. So many different, Arcadia, they support us. Vivarium manufacturers, so many different supporters. You can go onto our website and see who supports us.
Yes,
and something I should add, you got it.
You have
something I should add is that all of these businesses, all of these brands that support our work, we would like you as keepers to go out and support these brands. These are the brands that understand how important our work is and support us to do this. And we think that you should support them because they're working hard and giving up their profits to help support your hobby. So we would like you to look at our website at the brands that support us. And if you can, if you want their products, you should do business with them because we think they deserve your support.
Good. That's fine. So, about projects.
Oh, sorry. One other thing before you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. You were asking how people can support us. So there are a few ways. The first one is to join as a member. But another way that's equally important is that if they see our content online, if they find our videos or our podcast, we would like you to share them and to press the like button, to subscribe on YouTube, because the brands that support us want to know that we're doing a good job. And the way that they know that we're doing a good job is if they see our content all over the internet. The more people who see our information, the more successful our mission will be. And the more likely these organizations and businesses are to continue to support us. So if you share, if you like, if you comment, if you subscribe, that is so valuable. I can't explain and emphasize this enough. It's very important.
Yes, and as you said before, many people were saying that we have to do something, yeah? And many people...
This is something they can do.
Don't know what can I do? What can I do to help this project to be... To get
effective.
The better. I'm stuck.
Yeah, this is something that everyone can do, and joining is the best thing you can do to help us. Joining as a member is the best thing you can do, but everybody can share our content. Everybody can put it on their own profile. So even if only your auntie or only your grandmother sees the content, that's good, because these are the people that we need to understand. But if you share it in your reptile groups to your reptile friends, that's fabulous. That's exactly what we need. So if everybody could share our content, we would be very grateful and we would be very happy.
The simple fact of seeing it could help a lot, because
for sure,
as much views you have, as much the algorithm will...
The algorithm.
Yeah.
The algorithm. And here's where it becomes very important. So I said earlier that we were interviewed by a magazine who was discussing positive lists and white lists. Why did they contact us? Because they saw us online. The algorithm delivered the information to them because everybody was sharing it. And we recently were in a consultation with the EU Commission about illegal wildlife trade. And we were one of the first people that they contacted because they typed reptiles into the internet and we popped up. So because we were interviewed, we were able to introduce the organization from the EU to all of the other advocates from all over the world, from all over Europe, all over America. And it was important that they found us first, and then we were able to open the door to other people to input into that consultation. And that's simply because we have such a profile, and that's because people share our content. And I think that is becoming increasingly important. People find us, people who want the information can find us online, and then because they found us online, they have access to all of the things that we want to explain to them. But if you don't share our content, they won't find us, and then they won't see our information.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about some reptile business that think it's someone's problem, but not their problem?
Yeah, it's interesting. We know that we can't convince everybody. We are very passionate about what we do. We know that it's important. And to be entirely honest, 25 years ago, I was the same. I just love my animals and I want to keep my animals. I had no idea that there was a problem here. I had no idea that politics was going to take our animals away from us. And when I found out, I was sad. But I knew that somebody had to do something. And we don't expect anyone who runs a business or anyone who keeps reptiles to dedicate their whole life or all of their money to the cause. We don't want, that's not necessary. We want to do that for you. We want to make sure that you are protected and celebrated and supported. And it will cost a relatively small amount of money to help us to do that. For the stores and the businesses that think it's somebody else's problem, I would ask them to call me, and I would ask them to give me 15 minutes to explain to them why they should care and why it's important. I have yet to speak to anyone who has disagreed or not understood the problem. There is a problem. And if we do nothing, then the problem will get worse. It requires us to be united. It requires us all to work towards the same thing, whether we're in Spain, whether we're in Germany, whether we keep birds or fish, whether we like what's happening or not. We need to be united and we need to work together. The Fauna Federation conference was a fantastic opportunity and just showed what can be achieved if we work together. And this needs to continue. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely, yes. So, to speak about something funny and something beautiful, not only forbidden and strictly politics and laws, stupid laws, many times. I'd like to know about your experience. How many species have you bred in your house?
So, in my own house, very few. My own animals, very few. Most of my experience has been with other people's collections, other people's animals, and for many years. Do you have a word in Spain, the sidekick?
Sorry?
The sidekick.
The sidekick, yes, it's like
the assistant.
Sorry?
Like an assistant.
Inexistente.
Yeah, I was I was the assistant to many breeders.
Yes.
So there aren't many
Yeah.
there aren't many species that we didn't breed back when I was actively involved with looking after other people's reptiles. We bred Sanzinia in the 1990s, and we were the first people to breed golden pythons, the albino Burmese python, in the UK. We bred the first ones of those. We bred, my favorite lizards were given to me by a gentleman who runs a zoo in Gran Canaria called Jim Pether. And he gave me my favorite lizards that we bred, which were Geckonia chazalier, or Tarantola chazalier, which is a Moroccan helmeted gecko. So we've worked with those. We have bred that. If you were to give a list, I've probably either worked with those animals or bred those animals.
No, the point is, do you remember what you felt breeding animals for the first time?
Absolutely, and I very much miss it. I very much miss doing this because I haven't bred animals for many years now. But yeah, it's important.
About this, which is the point with the conservation and the breeding in home?
Yeah, it's the captive breeding is an interesting point in that there are very few animals that are bred in captivity and then taken back to the wild, and there are many reasons for this, and it's often because the reason these animals are threatened in the wild is because their habitat is destroyed. There are very few examples, especially with reptiles, where the population is declining because of collection for pets. That really doesn't happen very much ever, and very little now. One of the consultations that we had with the EU Commission was discussing the illegal wildlife trade, the illegal exotic animal trade. And we know that there is actually very little, or in Europe and America at least, very little illegal wildlife trade. But when the animal rights campaigners discuss with the politicians the illegal wildlife trade, they include the tiny number that are smuggled by people trying to do criminal activity. Yeah. And then they also add the people who tried to import their animals legally, but made a mistake with the administration paperwork. Yes. And these are all called illegal trade. And then they add in the animals that are collected for traditional medicine. And then they add in the plants and the wood that are bought in illegally. And they call this illegal wildlife trade. And the number is enormous. And they say the illegal wildlife trade is only behind drugs and guns and people smuggling and then illegal wildlife trade. But really, the number of actual smuggling is very small. So we were discussing with the European Commission how to solve even this tiny number. And I said, I can solve it for you in a very short period of time. What you do is you take every animal that is being smuggled, or every animal that is being has a small population in the wild, and every animal, every species, you can probably take 5 or 10 of those animals each year, bring them into captivity, give them to people who have the knowledge, the expertise, and the passion to breed them, and then they will produce captive bred legal animals. And so if anyone wants this animal, would they choose a wild one that is probably not healthy and is illegal and has risk and is smuggled? Or would they choose a captive bred one that's healthy and legal? Of course, they choose the captive bred one. So now you have solved the illegal wildlife smuggling problem. It is solved. Yeah?
Yes.
So in order to, that is one of the good things about captive breeding, the amount of knowledge that we can accumulate while all of these animals sometimes, or at least, are having problems in the wild with their population, and any illegal activity, you can solve it by breeding them in captivity. this is the answer for most animals. The more knowledge we have, it still makes me excited to know that the animals that we couldn't keep alive in the 1980s and the 1990s, when I was working with large collections and large breeding collections, to see today that these animals are common because reptile keepers have learned how to keep them and they understand them. And that knowledge has just increased because of people breeding them. It's fantastic.
Yes. And as everyone knows, Germany is a power in the European Union and in the world, maybe.
Yeah.
Why don't we look to Germany when we talk about conservation?
Yeah, absolutely. The citizen science aspect of the German community is particularly interesting. And I think it's unique to Germany that in Britain, and I think in many other places in Europe, the zoo community, the people who work in zoos, do not like to work with the people who keep them at home or private breeders. I'm not entirely sure why, but what I do know is that many of the people who look after animals in zoos used to be private breeders that then went to the zoo. So this is an interesting thing. But in Germany, there are very encouraging projects where zoos and conservation projects are working with private keepers who have all the knowledge and who have all the understanding. And more often now they're working together. And it's very encouraging to see. I really like this. It's a very interesting project.
Yes. And this is something that I can't understand.
Yeah.
We have the perfect example there, but no one is looking to there. No one is trying to replicate this.
Well, I think there are some efforts, very small efforts and very early efforts to breed to do similar projects. I'm not sure yet whether they will work in different countries, but the more success they have with this in Germany, the easier it becomes for other countries to say, hey, we should do this. We should work like this. So I should add, of course, being an English person, that we have lots of very good breeders in England as well that work very hard with species. But yeah, it's an important job.
Yes, but in Spain we have another problem. That's about money.
Yeah.
And when you have money in the middle of something, it turns very, very complicated, much more.
Yeah, I mean, that can be true. But I am also a strong believer that one of the best ways to protect an animal and for animals to be given value is for them to have some economic value, some monetary value. We live in a capitalist world where we have to pay bills, we have to buy food, we have to put fuel in the car. So everything has to have money. And if you want something to be successful, whether it's a pet store or whether it's a breeding project, if that animal has some value and people will want to buy it, then somebody has a motivation to produce them. So I think many people know that conservation is fueled by the economy. If you want an animal to be looked after, then give it a value. Commercialization.
Sorry. You meant the economy value of the animals, but in Spain the problem is the subsidies received by those who achieve the project. Not really to sell an animal. The money which comes from the government, to the organization who is playing the role of the conservation in this case.
Yeah, that's misappropriation of funds is often a situation. It's not something I know very much about, but I understand that it happens, and I think Spain has a particular issue with that, but I don't know much about that.
Yeah. So, for those who want to start in this hobby, What do you have to say to them?
I have the best answer for this, and it's not my answer. It's an answer that I learned from a friend of mine. There's a gentleman called Clem, and he's a good friend of mine. He's a Dutchman who lives in England now, and I've known him for about maybe 25 years. And we recently went to a reptile show in the UK to film some interviews, and Clem was there, so we spoke to Clem, and we asked everybody that we interviewed the same question that you just asked me, and the answer he gave was perfect. And he said, if you're beginning to start to work with reptiles, find a ninja. Sorry, no, find a Jedi. That was right. He said, find a Jedi, find an expert, somebody who knows a lot of things about reptiles, somebody who's been doing it for a long time, who understands, and ask them for their advice,
Like
and
a
meet
mentor.
the people that they know and be ready to speak with them, to take their advice. And do you know, the more I thought about this, the more I realized he was absolutely perfect in his advice. We know that we should research to understand our animals, but sometimes it can be difficult, especially when you go on the internet, to listen to someone. Do they understand? Are they speaking the truth? Do they know what they're talking about? If we're new, we can't tell the difference between good advice and bad advice. But Clem's advice was to find an expert Jedi who knows reptiles, who knows a lot about reptiles. And that's some of the best advice I've ever heard, and it's perfect.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. So, to conclude, Tony, what final message would you like to give to our audience about the importance of defending our hobby, and how can they can get more involved with fauna or responsible reptile keeping or another organization in their countries?
Well, here's the most important thing for our hobby from my perspective. And the most important thing for me is that we should be united. And I know my wife is particularly passionate about this thing, because in our hobby, in our community, there is so much argument. One person does it like this, another person does it like this, and then they argue. We say a joke that if you ask 10 reptile keepers for their opinion, you will get 11 opinions. And this we find it's okay, but when we argue amongst ourselves and when we create problems for our community, that only harms us. Yeah. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't disagree. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be looking at helping other people to get better at what they're doing, but we should do it in a friendly, supportive, encouraging way. To argue is a very basic way to discuss things. We should be more sophisticated and more helpful and more encouraging of the other people in our community. That would be my one wish for the whole reptile community. And when we work together, we can achieve much more. And this takes us on to what you said about supporting the organizations that are looking to protect what we do, because there are many people with very large budgets who are looking to stop reptile keeping, and we know that would be not only unfair, but we also know that it would be a disaster for everything that we are passionate about. So if you would like to protect your hobby and to make sure that your children have the same opportunities to keep reptiles and to learn about reptiles and to love nature and wildlife like you have, if you want your children to have the same opportunity, then if you support responsible reptile keeping or fauna or whichever organization is in your country, that would be one of the most successful things you can do. What we have is organizations such as Fauna, ZZF, US ARC in America, REPTA and the FBH in the UK. These are essentially lobbying organizations that speak to the government and speak to legislators to set the record straight there, to make sure that our voice is heard in government. Our job is to support all of these organizations so that their message goes out to the broader public. If you think of us like a dedicated media department for the international reptile hobby, because the fight that we have today isn't just a fight, an argument with animal rights campaigners about facts or science. It's not just to convince our government. These things are important, but this is only half the battle. The rest of the battle is to help normal people and people who don't keep reptiles understand what we do, because many of the political arguments now are a battle for hearts and minds, and the most popular arguments, the ones that the public think they understand, they hold weight. The influence that the general public can put onto politicians and journalists and civil servants and legislators, their influence helps these people to make their decisions. And so we need to educate and inform people via social media about what responsible reptile keeping looks like. And the more people we have on our side, the more we will be able to convince the legislators that they should listen to us. So that's the two parts of it going hand in hand. The legislators and the educators working with governments and legislators, and the social media and the communication side of things working together. That's what we do.
That's great.
Thank
Tony,
you.
You are a great communicator. I really enjoy this time.
You mean
with
I
you.
talk a lot? Is that what you mean?
No.
This is what my wife tells me. She says if you want anyone to talk about reptiles and reptile advocacy, you just put some money in the slot and he will talk all day.
I really enjoy this time with you. Really.
Thank you. Me too. I appreciate you taking me as a guest.
Thank you very much. And the last one.
Yes. Oh no. The last question. What will this be?
Give me a funny anecdote with reptiles.
Oh
Happened to
no.
you, obviously.
Oh no. Let me think. So I'm trying to think of one that I could tell in public. So
that's the main problem when I ask this.
Yes. Well, my boss in Gran Canaria, a man called Jim Pether, we were walking around the zoo late one night, and we had a big torch, a flashlight, and he shined the torch into the crocodile enclosure with the Nile crocodiles. And he said, "Oh no, someone has thrown a water bottle into the crocodiles. Will you jump in and collect it for me, please?" So because I was young and I was very fit, I climbed over the wall and I jumped down the steep wall into the crocodiles to get the water bottle. And I went into the water to get the water bottle. And at this point, he turned off the light and started to call the crocodiles to come to. So it was dark, and the wall was very high, but somehow, because I was so frightened, I managed to climb the wall very quickly to get out of the way from the crocodiles. And he thought this was funny, and he used to do this thing very often to put me in situations to see if I would cope with them very well. And he's still a very good friend, but now he's old and I'm young, so maybe I should do the same to him, to tease him also.
Maybe you will have one less friend.
Yeah, one less friend. Yeah, that could happen. Yeah, he's a good guy. We've been on many field trips together. We went recently to Equatorial Guinea, which is in West Africa, and not many people go there. And it was a very difficult expedition, but it was good to go with Jim. So yeah, he's a good guy, but he can be very funny.
Yes. So Luis from Federación Fauna.
Hey Luis.
A hug to Tony.
How are you? Hope you're well.
Yes, and I don't know. I'm looking for interesting comments. Valentina Gutierrez likes your strategy.
Hey, thank
to
you.
communicate.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. We never defend bad things. We need a responsible reptile keeping. 95% Spanish reptile keepers do the best that they can. Yes. Sure.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very small percentage of reptile keepers who do a bad job, and this is something that we try to address, but the bad keepers are used as an example that affects us all, and that is not fair.
Okay. So finally, 82 people.
Great, thank you very much all for listening
to see us.
The Englishman. It's since we left Brexit, I didn't think we would be invited to Europe very often. So thank you for having us back.
Yes, sure.
Maybe next time we do a podcast, Diego, we can speak in Spanish.
Could you try?
No, I can't speak Spanish very well,
but
I'll try.
I'm not a very good speaker in English.
Your English is better than my Spanish. This is very true.
Let me hear you in Spanish.
Oh my God! We'll do a test another day. Yeah. I would be embarrassed.
Okay, today I have to recognize that I am very nervous because I've never spoken English before in public.
Oh. Okay, well, it was very good. I understood everything that you said, which is more than would happen if I spoke in Spanish. So, but interestingly, because I learned the little bit of Spanish that I had and I have forgotten now in Gran Canaria, when I go to mainland Spain and I use the little bit of Spanish that I have, they say, "Hey, where are you from? Are you from the Canary Islands?" And they don't even understand what I say because my Spanish is from the Canaries. It's terrible.
I'm sorry, but it's not Spanish.
It's not proper Spanish, is it?
Yeah, funny. So thank you very much, Tony. Thank you for being the beta version of the English version podcast.
Thank you. And I really appreciate all of your listeners giving their time to listen to us in English. And yes, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Maybe then with the subtitles, when the video is processed, and YouTube can give automatic subtitles in Spanish.
Yeah, well, all of our videos now are translated using AI, but yeah, YouTube is about to translate in real time, isn't it?
I don't know if it is working now.
No, I didn't see it.
Let me check.
I think Google Meetings is doing a job like this, but I don't know if YouTube is. But very soon.
No, subtitles are not working now. Yeah. YouTube have to process the video, and then maybe tomorrow in the morning people could watch the video with Spanish subtitles. Spanish or German or Chinese, maybe.
Chinese. Let's do Chinese next time, yes? And then we both can't speak Chinese.
So very, very funny. Tony, thank you very much.
No problem.
You are very brave for being here
stupid
today.
But yeah,
it's very kind.
It'll be very nice to see you when I'm next in Spain, or if you're in England, you know where to find me.
Okay, I'll try to visit you in England.
Yes, do this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
We speak again
Bye.
soon.
Bueno,
Goodbye.
Adiós a todos.
Adiós.
Lo que he dicho. Los subtítulos mañana estarán disponibles en inglés. Si alguno se le da por mirar el final del vídeo, mañana por la mañana ya se podrá ver con los subtítulos en español y podréis ver todo el directo en diferido y con subtítulos como Dios manda. La semana que viene...
Yeah, I think so.
La semana que viene os cuento quién va a venir.
What's that, babe? No, I'm all right, babe, thanks.
La semana que viene tenemos a Luis Bernabeu de Hagen, ¿vale? El representante comercial de Exoterra aquí en España. Tendremos una charla interesante con él, a ver qué nos cuenta. Así que nada, faunáticos, nos vemos el próximo jueves. Un saludo a todos.